welcome back to the channel, and today we're taking a deep dive into the Sony A7 III, one of the more popular hybrid cameras ever made. We'll go over specs, real-world performance, pros and cons, how it compares to newer cameras like the A7 IV, and most importantly, who this camera is actually made for in 2026. Starting with the build of the camera. It has a very deep grip. It's got a bunch of customizable buttons. You have a C1 and C2 button on the top that I like to customize for my ISO and white balance. The joystick is one of my favorite features of this camera. I use it to move my focus points around so that I don't have to use the touchscreen on it. A couple of downsides though is the port buttons are a little flimsy, so they do not hold very well and can be easily broken off. If you don't use a battery grip, your pinky is going to overhang like mine does. Photography is where this camera really shines. You have 24.2 megapixels of full frame sensor with around 15 stops of dynamic range and 14-bit raw photos. Now, low light performance is not too bad. With around 6400, you can still get clean images. When it comes to 12800, you're pushing it, you'll still get noise, but you will have to use denoise software like Lightroom's denoise to get some really usable clean pictures. Now, the IAS in continuous mode is super reliable, especially for portraits and events. You have 693 phase detect autofocus points, 425 contrast detect points, and that covers about 93% of the sensor. When it comes to the speed, you only have about 10 frames per second. Dual card slots, so you get a UHS-1 slot and a UHS-2 slot, which the UHS-2 slot is going to give you that faster readout speed, so the buffer is not going to be as heavy hitting. For photography, this camera really shines here. You have a 24.2 BSI full frame sensor with around 15 stops of dynamic range and 14-bit raw photos. That might sound like a mouthful, but all that really means is you have a lot more flexibility with your color science in the end. You do get ISO of 6400. Even up to 12800, it's still usable. You will have to use some post-production work like Lightroom's denoise function, but other than that, you'll still get usable images. Now, when it comes to your speed shooting, this is where it kind of has some downsides. So you do have 10 frames per second of shooting, which is not super crazy. You have 2 SD card slots. So there's no CF Express A card slot in here, but you do have a UHS-2 card slot and a UHS-1 card slot. You have 5 axis of IBIS, so you can hold the camera handheld and do longer shutter speeds. You could go up to 1 second and still get pretty clear images. The one thing to watch out for though is when you're shooting in silent shutter, you can get banding and some distortion because of the rolling shutter. Let's talk some video. It shoots 4K 30 with a crop, and it's a pretty hefty crop too. But you do get to shoot 4K 24 uncropped and 1080p up to 120 frames per second for your slow-mo shooting. Now, where it really isn't that great in modern day is the 8-bit 420 internal video recording. The 8-bit is very lacking nowadays. You will not be able to do much with this colors. You can, but you will notice some color distortion in the tops in, say, your skies and just heavy blues and stuff like that. The 4K is actually oversampled from 6K, so it is super sharp and it has great detail from edge to edge, but with that big limitation of 8-bit video, you're going to have to do a lot of heavy color grading, and it's not going to be that great for a beginner. The camera will start to fall apart compared to that 10-bit video though. In the video settings, you also get S-Log2 and S-Log3 HLG profiles for better straight-out of camera results. My personal recommendation for the best results is Picture Profile 7 with S-Log2 for the best dynamic range, or Picture Profile 10 with HLG if you want easier editing. So straight out of camera, it'll look a lot better, so you don't have to do a whole lot of post-production. A few downsides is noticeable rolling shutter when you're doing panning. So if you're moving back and forth a lot with this camera, you will notice that rolling shutter and it will be very warped. The built-in mic is pretty bad, so I will recommend using an external mic like the Saramonic or even the DJI Rode mics. It does not have a flip out screen, only a tilting screen, and it doesn't even tilt all the way down. And it does not have any active cooling, so you will have some overheating issues if you're shooting for a long period of time. Usability and features. This camera uses the modern FZ100 battery, which is still used in modern cameras today. Unlike the recent camera that just came out, the Sony A7iii, which uses a different battery, but you're still going to get all-day battery life. They're pretty cheap to come up on. With Amazon, you can get some third-party batteries, which still will give you that same first-party battery life. You can pick up 2 of them for like $30. But when it comes to the menus of this camera, it's the older menus. It's going to be the UI 1.0 version and not the 2.0 version that is in all the modern-day cameras, and especially in the Sony A7 IV that came out just a few years later. So you're going to have a little bit of a harder time navigating through the screen menus. That's just going to make it a little bit harder if you decide to transition later on down the line. This is the last of the cameras that used that UI. When it comes to screen performance, this 3-axis tilting screen is a very low resolution screen, and it is not that bright at all. If you're doing outdoor shooting, you're going to have some issues. You're not going to be able to see everything. If it's above you or below you, you're going to have a little bit of trouble. My big recommendation is if things are in front of you, always go for that EVF. It is a 2.36 million dot EVF, which is still very sharp, very clear, and very bright. So if you're going to be going outdoors, even indoors, and it's a little bit darker, I would still recommend using that EVF so that you can be a little bit respectful to the people around you too, because in the dark, no one wants a screen right in their face. And it does have a couple of dials, one on the front and one on the back. Alright, now let's get into some pros and cons of this camera. Some pros will be the image quality still holds up very well. You do have that 24.2 megapixels, which is still very solid, which also correlates to that low light performance. Reliable autofocus, you do have that long battery life. It's a strong hybrid camera for both photo and video. Now, the Sony E-mount system is very versatile. Like, I have an E-mount lens on here. It's a third-party lens, and you can also get ones like Tamron and Sigma. They have third-party lenses made for Sony E-mount, and you can get really affordable lenses with it too. Like, you can get some that are going to be very good for beginners to get into under that $500 mark and still be a very solid lens, and it's amazing value on the used market for what you're paying for. With a sub $1,000 camera body only, it's still very solid. But let's get into the cons though. These cons are going to be that 8-bit video limit. That color grading, if you don't plan on doing that, then you don't have to worry about that all that much. But if you do think you're going to do some color grading, it's going to be very limited. Now, the autofocus isn't as advanced as the modern AI systems are. You won't have a whole lot of subject detect autofocus, that low res screen, and it does not flip outwards. It is only a tilting screen. The older menu systems and the rolling shutter, and only one UHS 2 card slot. Those are going to be your big cons, but if you can find a reason to dismiss some of those, like if you're not going to do a whole lot of action shooting, UHS 2 won't be a problem for you. Some of these, like the low res screen, that's going to be a big hitter for a lot of people. Other than that, it's still very solid with just a few limitations. Now, who would I say this camera is for? It's great for portrait shooters that don't need that fast readout speed or that insanely high shutter speed, event photographers, landscape photographers, hybrid shooters doing light video, YouTubers who don't have to do heavy color grading, people entering the Sony ecosystem, so if this is going to be your first Sony camera, it is still a very good option, and professionals needing a reliable backup camera. So this is going to be like your B cam or C cam, something like that. For sports shooters, it's going to be okay, but that autofocus is where it's really going to get you. And for content creators with simple workflows, this is also going to be a very decent camera for you. Now, who I would not recommend this camera for is serious filmmakers, heavy color grading workflows, vloggers, because you don't have a flippy screen, so you're not going to be able to see yourself, people who want the latest autofocus tech, and anyone who wants those modern UI features, I would recommend going up to the A7 IV for just a little bit more money. My final verdict here, is the Sony A7 III still worth it in 2026? Yes. If you prioritize photography, want full frame on a budget, and only need basic video for things like YouTube or content creation, this is going to be a great camera for you. But if video is going to be your main focus, or you want something more future-proof, it's probably worth stepping up to something a little bit newer. That is going to be it for this video. If you found it helpful, drop a like and subscribe for more camera reviews and filmmaking content, and let me know in the comments, are you still rocking the A7 III in 2026, or are you going to upgrade to some of the newer cameras?